1940, this was a dusty desert town of a few thousand people, a place where the train stopped for water on its way to Los Angeles. Nothing here but sand, heat, and a couple of streets. 30 years later, it was the brightest, richest, most famous playground on Earth, pulling in millions of people and rivers of cash. Las Vegas. And the men who built it into that were not businessmen, they were gangsters. The mob ran this city from the shadows for decades, financing the casinos, skimming the profits, and killing anyone who got in the way. The most famous of them poured a fortune into a single hotel, then took a bullet through a window for it. This is the story of how the American mob turned an empty patch of desert into Sin City. I used AI to bring old Las Vegas back, from the first neon to the last mob boss. Stay with me. Las Vegas began as almost nothing. In 1905, a railroad company auctioned off lots of desert land beside a new train stop, and a tiny town grew up around the tracks. The name means the meadows, for a few natural springs out in all that dry country. For years, it stayed small, a railroad town. A few saloons, some boarding houses, and a lot of empty desert stretching out in every direction. Nobody looked at Las Vegas and saw the future. There was no reason to. It was a place you passed through on the way to somewhere that mattered. Two things changed everything, and both happened at nearly the same time. In 1931, in the depths of the Great Depression, the state of Nevada made a desperate bet. It legalized gambling. While the rest of America was shutting casinos down, Nevada threw its doors wide open. And just outside town, the government began building one of the largest structures in the world, the Hoover Dam. Thousands of workers poured into the desert to raise that wall of concrete across the Colorado River. When they had money in their pockets and a day off, there was one place to spend it. The dam also handed Las Vegas two things it had never had enough of: cheap electric power and water. Suddenly, this dead little town had lights to burn and a reason to grow. The first real Las Vegas grew up downtown on a street called Fremont. Casino by casino, the neon went up, until the whole block glowed so bright that people started calling it Glitter Gulch. Cowboys, dam workers, gamblers, and tourists off the highway crowded the sidewalks under signs that never slept. A giant neon cowboy waved his arm over the street, all night, every night. It was loud, cheap, and open around the clock, and for a while it was the whole show. But downtown was only the warm-up. The real money was about to be made out on a lonely stretch of highway south of town, in the open desert, where the land was cheap and there were no rules at all. In 1941, a man built a resort out on that empty highway. Not just a casino, but a hotel with a pool, a restaurant, and rooms, all under one roof in the middle of nowhere. He called it the El Rancho Vegas. The idea was simple and brilliant. Give people a reason to stay instead of just gambling and driving away. Others copied him fast, and one by one, resorts began to rise along that highway. That road would get a nickname that stuck forever: the Strip. And it caught the eye of some very dangerous men back east. By the mid-1940s, the American mob was hunting for somewhere to put its money. Gambling was illegal almost everywhere else in the country. But in Nevada, it was legal, and a legal casino was a perfect machine for washing dirty cash. The man who saw it most clearly was a New York gangster named Bugsy Siegel. Everyone called him Bugsy, though never to his face. He was handsome, charming, violent, and tied to the very top of organized crime. Siegel came out to the desert with mob money behind him and a picture in his head. He would build the most glamorous casino resort the world had ever seen, right on the Strip, and spare no expense. That last part turned out to be the problem. Siegel threw himself into a resort called the Flamingo. He wanted marble, imported plants, real Hollywood glamour that the dusty desert had never seen. But he had no head for construction. Suppliers cheated him. Costs spiraled out of control. A project meant to run about $1 million swallowed $6 million of the mob's money, and the bosses back east turned furious. There were whispers that Siegel, or his girlfriend, was skimming the cash for themselves. On the day after Christmas, 1946, the Flamingo opened half-finished in the rain. Hardly anyone came. The tables lost money. Within weeks, Siegel had to close it and reopen it later. And the mob does not forgive $6 million easily. Siegel was living on borrowed time now, and he probably knew it. The bill came due in the summer of 1947. On the night of June 20th, Bugsy Siegel was sitting on a sofa in his girlfriend's home in Beverly Hills reading a newspaper. Someone outside the window fired a rifle through the glass. Again and again. Siegel was killed instantly. No one was ever arrested. Everyone in the underworld understood exactly what it meant. A mob execution. Payment for the money that had vanished into the Flamingo. And here is the strange twist. Right as Siegel died, the Flamingo finally started turning a profit. The dream that killed him was about to make his bosses rich. The mob had learned its lesson. Las Vegas worked. They just needed to run it their own way. What came next was quieter and far more profitable. Through the 1950s, mob families from New York, Chicago, and Cleveland moved into Las Vegas together. On paper, respectable businessmen owned the casinos. Behind them stood the mob. Their real genius was the skim. Before the nightly take was ever counted or taxed, trusted men lifted a fat share of the cash straight off the top and carried it back east in suitcases. Millions of untaxed dollars a year, invisible, flowing out of the counting rooms. And to build even bigger, they tapped a strange source of money. The pension fund of the Teamsters Union, which loaned tens of millions to raise casino after casino. The mob was now the hidden landlord of the whole Strip, and business was booming. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of Las Vegas, and the mob-run casinos sold a fantasy the whole country wanted. You could see the biggest stars in America for the price of a dinner. Frank Sinatra held court at the Sands, and when he was in town, he brought his friends. Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. The group the papers called the Rat Pack. They drank, joked, and sang on stage half the night, then gambled until dawn. Showgirls, jackpots, free drinks, and neon as far as you could see. Las Vegas told ordinary Americans they could step into a movie for a weekend. And almost nobody in those glittering crowds stopped to think about whose money was really running the show. There was one more thing that made this place unlike anywhere on Earth. Just 60 miles away, out in the desert, the United States government was testing nuclear bombs. And Las Vegas, being Las Vegas, turned it into a tourist attraction. Casinos printed schedules of the blasts. Crowds gathered on rooftops at dawn, drinks in hand, to watch the flash light up the sky and feel the shudder roll in across the desert. There was a Miss Atomic Bomb beauty contest. Mushroom clouds bloomed on postcards. Only Las Vegas could look at a nuclear test and see a party. By the late 1960s, the mob's grip was starting to slip, thanks to one very strange man. Howard Hughes, the billionaire, moved into the top floor of the Desert Inn and refused to leave. When the owners tried to throw him out, he simply bought the entire hotel. Then he bought another and another, spending hundreds of millions to snap up casino after casino. Hughes was odd, reclusive, terrified of germs, but he was legitimate, and the state loved him for it. Nevada rewrote its laws to let public corporations own casinos, which meant clean companies could finally buy in. Slowly, the men in suits pushed out the men with suitcases. The skim got harder. The FBI closed in. The mob's era in Las Vegas was ending. By the 1980s, the corporations had won. The old bosses went to prison or to the grave. And giant public companies turned the Strip into the family-friendly mega-resort spectacle you know today. The mob was pushed out of the city it had built. But make no mistake about what happened here. A patch of empty desert, where the train once stopped for water, became one of the most recognizable places on the planet. And it was gangsters who lit the first neon, took the first gamble, and paid for it in cash and in blood. Bugsy Siegel never saw what his flamingo became. It still stands on the Strip, in a city he helped dream up and did not live to enjoy. Next time you see those lights, remember they were switched on by men who never expected to get away with it. Thanks for walking through it with me. If this brought old Las Vegas back to life for you, hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments which lost place I should rebuild next.